She thought it was just another day cleaning the mansion, until she found the old millionaire in his study, struggling to breathe and whispering the last wish of his life. No one could have imagined what she would do next. Stay with me right to the end, because this story will break your heart and heal it at the same time. Before we dive in, take a quick second to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment below where in the world you're watching from. Now let's begin. Grace Williams had been working at the Ashford estate for 3 years. Every morning at 6 sharp, she would walk through the grand entrance doors, her cleaning supplies in hand, her uniform pressed and spotless. The mansion was enormous, with marble floors that reflected the crystal chandeliers, oil paintings that cost more than most people made in a lifetime, and rooms so large her footsteps echoed no matter how softly she walked. Grace was 34 years old, a single mother of 2, and she had learned long ago to keep her head down and do her work without asking questions. The wealthy families she worked for preferred it that way. She was meant to be invisible, to clean their messes and disappear before they even noticed she was there. But Richard Ashford was different. Mr. Ashford was 78 years old, silver-haired, and walked with a cane that clicked against the marble floors. Unlike other wealthy people Grace had worked for, he always said good morning when he saw her. He remembered her children's names, asked how they were doing in school, and sometimes left small gifts for them on the kitchen counter. A book for her daughter who loved to read, a toy car for her son who dreamed of becoming a mechanic. Grace appreciated his kindness, but she never let herself get too comfortable. She had seen what happened to maids who got too close to their employers. Rumors started, people talked, jobs disappeared, so she smiled politely, said thank you, and kept working. The mansion had 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a library that stretched 2 stories high, and a study where Mr. Ashford spent most of his time. Grace cleaned that study every Tuesday and Friday, dusting the leather-bound books, polishing the mahogany desk, and emptying the wastebasket filled with crumpled papers covered in his handwriting. She had noticed Mr. Ashford getting weaker over the past few months. His hands shook when he held his coffee cup. His breathing sounded labored when he climbed the stairs. Sometimes she would find him staring out the window for long periods, as if he was seeing something the rest of the world couldn't see. His son Marcus visited once a month, always in expensive suits, always checking his phone, always leaving after exactly 1 hour. Grace had overheard their conversations through the study door. Marcus talked about business deals, stock portfolios, and inheritance taxes. Mr. Ashford mostly listened in silence. His daughter Patricia lived in California and called every Sunday at 3 o'clock. Grace could hear Mr. Ashford's voice through the walls, trying to sound cheerful, asking about her job, her husband, her children he had never met. The calls never lasted more than 15 minutes. It was a Thursday morning in October when Grace found him. She had arrived at her usual time, let herself in with the key Mr. Ashford had given her, and started her routine in the kitchen. She made fresh coffee, knowing he would want it when he woke up, and began organizing the mail that had been left on the counter. Bills, business letters, and what looked like medical documents with words she didn't understand, but knew weren't good news. When she didn't hear him moving around upstairs by 8 o'clock, she became concerned. Mr. Ashford was always an early riser, usually in his study by 7:30, reading the newspaper and sipping his coffee. She climbed the marble staircase, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet runner, and knocked gently on his bedroom door. No answer. She knocked again, a little louder. Still nothing. Grace hesitated. She wasn't supposed to enter his private rooms without permission, but something felt wrong. The house was too quiet, too still. She turned the handle and pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. The bedroom was empty, but she could hear faint sounds coming from down the hall. She followed the noise to the study, where the door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, she could see Mr. Ashford slumped in his leather chair, one hand pressed against his chest, the other gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Grace rushed into the room. Mr. Ashford's face was pale, beads of sweat dotting his forehead. His breathing was shallow and ragged. "Mr. Ashford," she said, kneeling beside his chair. "Should I call an ambulance?" He shook his head weakly, his eyes finding hers. "Grace," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I've been waiting for you." She reached for the phone on his desk, but he caught her wrist with surprising strength. "Please," he said, struggling to speak. "Not yet. I need to tell you something first, something important." Grace looked into his eyes and saw something that made her pause. Not just pain, but urgency, desperation, like he was holding on to consciousness by sheer force of will. "What is it, Mr. Ashford?" He pointed to the desk drawer with a trembling finger. "Bottom drawer. Key is in the pencil holder." Grace found the small brass key and unlocked the drawer. Inside was a thick manila envelope, sealed and heavy in her hands. Her name was written across the front in Mr. Ashford's careful handwriting. "That envelope," he whispered, "contains something very important. Something I should have done years ago, but I was too proud, too stubborn, too afraid." He paused, taking shallow breaths. "Grace, I need you to promise me something." She nodded, still holding the envelope. "Promise me you'll do what's inside. Promise me you'll see it through, no matter what anyone else says, no matter how difficult it gets." His grip on her wrist tightened. "It's my last wish, Grace. The only thing that matters to me now." Grace stared at him, confused and frightened. "Mr. Ashford, I don't understand. What's in here?" "Open it after," he said, his voice getting weaker. "After I'm gone. But promise me first. Promise me you'll do it." "I promise," Grace heard herself saying, though she had no idea what she was agreeing to. Mr. Ashford smiled then, the first real smile she had seen from him in months. "Thank you," he whispered. "You don't know what this means to me." His eyes closed, and for a moment Grace thought he was gone, but then he opened them again, looking directly at her with startling clarity. "Grace, I want you to know something. You have been more family to me these past 3 years than my own children ever were. Your kindness, your respect, the way you remembered my birthday when my own son forgot, the way you always asked about my health, not my money. That meant everything to an old man who thought he had lost the ability to feel anything." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes. She had never heard him speak so openly, so vulnerably. "I know you think you're just the maid," he continued, each word requiring tremendous effort. "But you're so much more than that. You're the daughter I should have raised. You're the person I should have been." His breathing became more labored, and Grace knew she was running out of time. "Now," he whispered, "call the ambulance, and Grace, remember your promise." Grace called 911 with shaking hands, her voice trembling as she gave the dispatcher the address. Within minutes, she could hear sirens getting closer, their wailing sound cutting through the morning silence of the wealthy neighborhood. The paramedics rushed into the study, their equipment rattling as they worked to stabilize Mr. Ashford. Grace stood in the corner, clutching the manila envelope against her chest, watching as they checked his vital signs and prepared him for transport. "Ma'am, are you family?" one of the paramedics asked. "No," Grace replied quietly. "I'm his housekeeper. We need to contact his next of kin. Do you have their information?" Grace nodded and gave them Marcus's phone number from the contact list on Mr. Ashford's desk. As they wheeled him out on the stretcher, Mr. Ashford's eyes found hers one last time. His lips moved slightly, and she could just make out the word, "promise." The mansion felt empty after everyone left. Grace sat in the kitchen, staring at the envelope in her hands. She had made a promise, but what if she couldn't keep it? What if whatever was inside was impossible for someone like her to accomplish? Her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor who watched her children before school. "Kids got on the bus fine. Hope work is okay." Work. Grace realized she hadn't thought about her normal cleaning routine since finding Mr. Ashford. She looked around the pristine kitchen, at the coffee she had made that morning still sitting cold in the pot, at the mail still scattered on the counter. Everything seemed different now, like the whole world had shifted in the span of an hour. She decided to wait. Mr. Ashford had said to open the envelope after he was gone, and she would respect his wishes. Instead, she did what she always did when life felt overwhelming. She cleaned. Grace spent the day moving through the mansion, like she was in a trance. She dusted every surface, vacuumed every carpet, and polished every piece of silver until it gleamed. The physical work helped calm her mind, but she couldn't stop thinking about the envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. At 4 o'clock, her phone rang. It was Marcus. "Grace, I just got to the hospital. The doctors say my father had a massive heart attack. He's in intensive care, but they don't think he's going to make it through the night." Grace closed her eyes, feeling her heart sink. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Marcus. I need you to stay at the house tonight. in case the hospital calls. Patricia is flying in from California, but she won't be here until tomorrow morning." "Of course," Grace said. "Whatever you need. And Grace, don't touch anything in his study. There might be important documents in there that we'll need to go through." After Marcus hung up, Grace stared at the envelope. She hadn't told him about it, and she wasn't sure why. Something about the way Mr. Ashford had given it to her, the urgency in his voice, the secrecy of it all, made her feel like it was meant to stay between them. She called her neighbor to ask if her children could spend the night, explaining that she needed to stay at work. Then she made herself a simple dinner and sat at the kitchen table, the envelope beside her plate, waiting. The call came at 11:37 that night. "Grace, this is Marcus. My father passed away 20 minutes ago." Grace felt tears streaming down her face before she even realized she was crying. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Thank you. Look, Patricia and I will be there tomorrow morning to start making arrangements. You can take the day off. We'll call you when we need you to come back." After he hung up, Grace sat in the silent kitchen for a long time. Mr. Ashford was gone. The kind old man who remembered her children's names, who asked about her life, who treated her like a human being instead of just a service, was gone forever. With trembling hands, she picked up the envelope and carefully opened it. Inside was a stack of legal documents, all bearing the letterhead of Patterson, Williams & Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. The first document was a letter addressed to her in Mr. Ashford's handwriting. "My dear Grace," it began, "if you are reading this, then I have passed away, and you are about to discover something that will change your life forever. I pray that you will find the strength to carry out my final wish, because it is the most important thing I have ever asked of anyone." Grace's hands shook as she continued reading. 42 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I was young, proud, and foolish. I fell in love with a beautiful woman named Sarah Williams, but I was too concerned with what my family would think, too worried about my reputation, too afraid of what society would say about a white man loving a black woman. Grace gasped, her heart pounding. Williams. That was her last name. Sarah was pregnant with my child when I abandoned her. I gave her money and told her to go away, to never contact me again. I told myself I was protecting both of us, but the truth is I was protecting only myself. I was a coward. The letter continued, and with each word, Grace felt her world turning upside down. "That child was your mother, Grace. You are my granddaughter. You have been cleaning my house, caring for me, showing me the love and respect that I never deserved, and I have been too ashamed to tell you the truth." Grace had to stop reading. She stood up from the table, walking in circles around the kitchen, trying to process what she had just learned. Mr. Ashford was her grandfather, her mother's father, the man who had abandoned her grandmother all those years ago. She thought about her mother, Sarah Williams, who had died when Grace was 25. Her mother had always refused to talk about Grace's grandfather, would change the subject whenever Grace asked questions. Now she understood why. With a deep breath, Grace sat back down and continued reading. "I know this comes as a shock, and I know you may hate me for what I did, but Grace, I need you to help me make things right. In this envelope, you will find my last will and testament. I have left everything to you. The house, the money, the investments, everything. But there are conditions." Grace flipped through the legal documents, her eyes scanning words she barely understood. Trust funds, property deeds, stock certificates, bank accounts, numbers that seemed impossibly large. "My first condition is that you use this inheritance to find your grandmother, Sarah. She is still alive, living in a nursing home in Memphis. I have been paying for her care anonymously for the past 15 years, but she doesn't know it's from me. I want you to tell her that I never stopped loving her, and that I am sorry for being such a fool." Tears blurred Grace's vision as she read on. "My second condition is that you must reveal the truth about our family to Marcus and Patricia. They need to know they have a sister, and they need to know what kind of man their father really was. This will not be easy, Grace. They will be angry. They will fight you. They will try to contest the will. But I have made it legally binding. The money is yours by right." Grace set the letter down, overwhelmed. She was rich, wealthy beyond anything she had ever imagined. But she was also being asked to destroy a family, to reveal secrets that would shatter everything Marcus and Patricia believed about their father. the letter wasn't finished. My final condition is the most important one. I want you to use this money to help other people the way you helped me. Start a foundation, build schools, support single mothers like yourself. Show the world what real kindness looks like. Show them what I should have been. At the bottom of the letter was a phone number and a name, Attorney James Patterson. Call him tomorrow, Grace. He will explain everything and help you through the legal process. And remember, you promised me. This is my last wish, and you are the only person I trust to carry it out. Grace sat in the quiet kitchen until dawn, reading and rereading the documents, trying to understand the magnitude of what Mr. Ashford had asked her to do. She wasn't just inheriting money, she was inheriting a mission, a responsibility to right the wrongs of the past and build something better for the future. When Marcus and Patricia arrived that morning, Grace was waiting for them in the living room, the envelope on the coffee table in front of her. They looked surprised to see her there. "Grace, I thought I told you to take the day off," Marcus said, loosening his tie as he sat down across from her. Patricia, a well-dressed woman in her 50s with her father's silver hair, glanced around the room with calculating eyes. "We need to start going through Father's things, figure out what needs to be done with the estate." Grace took a deep breath. "Actually, there's something you both need to know." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from confusion to impatience. "Grace, whatever this is about, it can wait. We have funeral arrangements to make, lawyers to call, and a lot of decisions that frankly don't concern you." Patricia nodded, checking her phone. "I'm sorry, but we really need to focus on family matters right now." Grace's hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. "This is about family matters. Your father left this for me before he died yesterday. He made me promise to share it with you." "Left what for you?" Marcus stood up, his voice sharp. "Grace, if you're trying to claim he promised you something, you need to understand that verbal agreements don't hold up legally." "It's not verbal," Grace said quietly, pulling out the legal documents. "It's all here in writing." Patricia moved closer, her eyes narrowing as she saw the law firm letterhead. "Those are legal documents. Where did you get those?" "Your father gave them to me yesterday morning, right before I called the ambulance. He was very clear about what he wanted me to do." Marcus snatched the papers from Grace's hands, his face growing red as he scanned the first page. "This is ridiculous. This has to be some kind of mistake. What does it say?" Patricia demanded, trying to read over her brother's shoulder. Marcus's voice was barely controlled. "According to this, Father left everything to Grace. The house, the money, all of it." Patricia laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's impossible. Grace, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is fraud. You can't just forge legal documents and expect us to believe them." "I didn't forge anything," Grace said, standing up slowly. "Your father had his reasons for what he did. Reasons you need to hear." "Reasons?" Marcus threw the papers onto the coffee table. "The only reason would be if you manipulated a sick old man into changing his will." "How long have you been planning this, Grace? How long have you been working on him?" Grace felt her chest tighten, but she forced herself to stay calm. "There's more you need to know. About your father, about me, about why he made this decision." Patricia picked up the letter in Mr. Ashford's handwriting, her eyes moving quickly across the page. As she read, her face went from anger to confusion to something approaching horror. "This can't be real," she whispered. "What?" Marcus grabbed the letter from his sister's hands. As he read, Grace watched his expression change from fury to disbelief. "He claims you're our sister?" Marcus looked up at Grace, his voice hollow. "He's saying our father had a relationship with your grandmother?" Grace nodded, her throat tight. 42 years ago, before he married your mother, my grandmother was Sarah Williams. She was pregnant with my mother when your father left her." Patricia sank into her chair, her face pale. "This is insane. Father would never. He wouldn't have kept something like this secret for so long." "But he did," Grace said softly. "He's been carrying this guilt his whole life. That's why he was always kind to me. That's why he knew my children's names, asked about my life. He knew who I was." Marcus paced across the room, running his hands through his hair. "Even if this story is true, and I'm not saying it is, it doesn't mean he had the right to give away our inheritance. We're his legitimate children." "So am I," Grace said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "According to the law, according to the DNA test results that are in that envelope, I'm his granddaughter. That makes me family too." Patricia looked up from the papers she was reading. DNA test? When did he get a DNA test? 6 months ago, Grace replied. He had it done without telling me. The results are in there with everything else. Marcus stopped pacing, his face hardening. This is blackmail. You found out somehow, probably through those medical documents you had access to while cleaning, and you blackmailed him into changing his will. That's not what happened. Then explain to me how a maid ends up inheriting millions of dollars from a man she's worked for 3 years, Marcus snapped. Explain to me how that makes any sense. Grace felt tears stinging her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Your father felt guilty about abandoning my grandmother. He felt guilty about never knowing his daughter, my mother. He felt guilty about the years he spent ignoring the fact that his granddaughter was right there in his house, taking care of him. Guilt doesn't justify theft, Patricia said coldly. And that's what this is. You stole our father from us, and now you're trying to steal our inheritance too. I never stole anything, Grace said, her voice growing stronger. I cleaned his house, I was respectful, I was kind. I never asked for anything more than my paycheck. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling our lawyer. This will's getting contested. No court in the world is going to let this stand. You can try, Grace said quietly. But your father worked with one of the best law firms in the city to make sure this was legally binding. He knew you would fight it. Patricia stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. How dare you? How dare you come into our family, into our grief, and try to destroy everything our father built? I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm trying to honor his last wish. His last wish? Marcus laughed bitterly. His last wish should have been to take care of the children who actually knew him, who actually loved him. Grace felt something break inside her chest. You think I didn't love him? You think those years of taking care of him, of listening to him talk about his loneliness, of watching him light up when he saw my children's drawings, you think that meant nothing to me? You loved his money, Patricia said harshly. I didn't even know about the money until yesterday, Grace shot back. I loved him because he was kind to me when no one else was, because he treated me like a human being instead of just hired help, because he remembered my birthday and asked about my dreams and worried when I was late to work. The room fell silent. Marcus and Patricia exchanged glances, and Grace could see something shifting in their expressions. You really didn't know? Marcus asked quietly. Grace shook her head. I had no idea who I was to him. I just thought he was a lonely old man who needed someone to care about him. Patricia sat back down, her anger seeming to deflate. He never talked about us like that. He never asked about our dreams. He talked about you all the time, Grace said softly. He was proud of your business success, Marcus. He kept every newspaper article that mentioned your company. And Patricia, he had pictures of your children on his desk. He talked about how smart they were, how much he wished he could see them more often. Marcus's voice was quieter now. He never told us that. He loved you both, but he carried this guilt about my grandmother, about my mother, about me. He felt like he didn't deserve your love because of what he'd done. Grace picked up another document from the envelope. There's more. He's been paying for my grandmother's care in a nursing home for 15 years. She's still alive. She's 91 years old, and she doesn't know the money comes from him. Our father has been supporting your grandmother for 15 years? Patricia asked. Yes, and according to his letter, he wants me to visit her. He wants me to tell her that he never stopped loving her and that he's sorry. Marcus sat down heavily, the fight seeming to go out of him. This changes everything we thought we knew about him. It doesn't change anything, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. It just means he made mistakes and tried to buy his way out of the guilt. Grace looked at both of them, these people who were apparently her half-siblings, and felt a strange mixture of sadness and hope. He didn't just give me money, he gave me conditions. I have to use it to help people. I have to start a foundation. I have to make sure other single mothers don't struggle the way my mother did, the way I have. A foundation? Marcus asked. Grace nodded, pulling out more documents. The Sarah Williams Foundation for Single Mothers. He had it all planned out. Scholarships, job training, childcare assistance. He wanted to use his money to fix the kind of problems that forced my grandmother to raise my mother alone. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, reading through the foundation papers. He really thought this through. He spent months planning it, maybe years. This wasn't a last-minute decision made by a sick man. This was his attempt to make things right. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where Grace had seen Mr. Ashford sitting so many times, staring into the distance. What happens if we contest the will anyway? Grace felt her heart sink. Then we'll spend years in court, and lawyers will get rich while your father's wishes are ignored. And if we don't contest it, then I do what he asked me to do. I visit my grandmother. I tell her the truth. I start the foundation, and I try to honor the memory of a man who made terrible mistakes, but spent the rest of his life trying to make up for them. Patricia looked up from the documents. There's something else here, something about us. Grace nodded. He wanted you to know the truth. He wanted you to know you have a sister. He hoped that maybe someday we could be a real family. A real family, Marcus repeated softly. After all these years of feeling like he was disappointed in us, like we never measured up to his expectations, it turns out he was disappointed in himself. The three of them sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of revelation settling around them like dust in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Finally, Patricia spoke. I need to see the DNA test results. Grace handed her the folder. Patricia studied the documents carefully, her expression unreadable. It's real, she said finally. You're really our sister. Marcus turned from the window. Half-sister. Sister, Patricia corrected firmly. If we're going to do this, if we're going to accept what Father wanted, then Grace is our sister. Full stop. Grace felt tears finally spilling over. You're not going to fight the will? Marcus walked back to the couch and sat down across from her. I don't know yet. This is a lot to process. Our father is dead. We just found out we have a sister, and our entire understanding of who he was has been turned upside down. But, Patricia added, we're not going to make any decisions today. We need time to grieve, time to think, time to figure out what this all means. Grace nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. This is overwhelming for all of us. Marcus looked at her with something that might have been curiosity instead of anger. Tell me about your children. Father mentioned them, but I never really listened. Grace smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Maya is 12. She wants to be a writer. She reads everything she can get her hands on. And David is 9. He takes apart every electronic device in the house to see how it works. Father left them college funds, Patricia said, looking through the papers. Full scholarships to any university they want to attend. Grace's breath caught. He did what? It's all here. College funds, trust accounts, even money set aside for their wedding funds when they're older. Patricia's voice was soft with wonder. He really did think of them as his great-grandchildren. Marcus shook his head slowly. He knew your children better than he knew his own grandchildren. That's on us, I suppose. We were so busy with our own lives that we never made time for him. It's not too late, Grace said quietly. I mean, for us, for this family, if you want it to be a family. Patricia and Marcus looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them. We'll see, Marcus said finally. First, we bury our father, then we figure out what comes next. Grace gathered the documents back into the envelope, her hands steadier now. There's one more thing. Your father asked me to speak at his funeral. He wanted me to tell people about the foundation, about what he was trying to do with his final act. You're going to speak at the funeral? Patricia asked. Only if you're okay with it. I know this is your family's time to grieve. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What would you say? Grace thought about Mr. Ashford, about the mornings when he would sit in his study and stare out the window, about the sadness in his eyes when he talked about his regrets, about the way he had smiled when she promised to carry out his last wish. I would tell them that he was a man who made mistakes, but who spent his final years trying to make things right. I would tell them that love isn't always perfect, but it's never too late to try to heal the wounds we've caused. And I would tell them that sometimes the greatest gift we can give is the chance for someone else to live a better life than we did. Patricia was crying now, tears streaming down her cheeks. He would have liked that. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, he would have. Grace stood up, still clutching the envelope. I should go. You have arrangements to make, and I have a promise to keep. Where are you going? Patricia asked. Grace looked toward the door, thinking about the long drive ahead of her. Memphis. I need to visit my grandmother. I need to tell her that Richard Ashford never stopped loving her, and that he's finally ready to come home.